and just told him how difficult my life was, and he helped me so much. And eventually, he got me into a day hospital program, and I just grew and developed so much. So when I went into kind of consulting coaching, it was to kind of give back because of the success I've had and give back to help other people. So I became committed to that, and that's what I've done for the past 20 years. So
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Wynn, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we are joined by Dennis C. Miller. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
thanks, Kevin. Happy to be here.
Just before we started shooting, you're telling me your background and stuff, and I thought it was so interesting. So I would love to hear the origin story, kind of like the lore of how you realized that you want to start a coaching business.
Let me start off with this here. I have some interesting information for you then. So I spent the first 25 years of my career in the healthcare business. I came out of graduate school from Columbia University School of Public Health and Health Administration. Wasn't anticipating working in hospitals, but I got my first job through a contact there. Went to a CPA firm on the consulting side for a couple of years in New York City. Became a chief financial officer of a hospital, executive vice president of a hospital, CEO of a hospital. And then I was 38 years old, the young hospital administrator of a large Catholic medical center. The head nun was the world ruler, was the president and everything, but I kind of ran the day-to-day hospital. I then went into the consulting field again. I really, my position had been eliminated from politics, but I got a job with a company that was doing health benefits for us, and so I became licensed to sort of sell and risk that kind of stuff, risk management service. Before you know it, I took over a company that had 3 clients walking out the door, and over a period of years we built it into the most profitable one in the company had in its division, and became the managing director of 3 states, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, and then the Atlantic states. I stayed there for 7 years. I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel it in my heart. Between you and me, I got recruited to another medical center, which I looked forward to, and got there and became president of the organization and took that organization to new heights. I stepped down after about 5 years to do something else, and as a kind of a consultant, so I just had this commitment to helping nonprofit organizations. So I began working with just nonprofit CEOs for the most part, board members, board chairs, sometimes development officers, and helping them learn how to do things better and more successful. And then I wrote my first book ever. Yesterday, by the way, I submitted my 7th book to the publisher for editing, so I've written a lot of books. But a little bit before, and then the firm I had, just grew substantially into over 20 people, and I transitioned it out after 18 years, the end of December of 24, and I started my new firm because I missed doing the work. Instead of just being the boss and growing the business and managing director and the founder and chairman, I just missed doing the work here. But a little bit of background on me personally, which your audience might find interesting or fascinating. And I did a TED Talk, Kevin, that's on the website, DennisCMiller.com, on the speakers, a TED Talk. And my story is that I kind of kept a secret for the first 66 years of my life. I didn't tell anybody what really happened to me. I wrote an autobiography called Moppin, Moppin apostrophe, Moppin Floors to CEO, from hopelessness and failure to happiness and success. My true life story, which was that, people knew me as a guy that, graduated from Rutgers University, Phi Beta Kappa, Ivy League graduate school, Columbia, blah, 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 CEO, and figured I had a silver spoon in my mouth. But I actually had a very difficult upbringing. I suffered emotional trauma and abuse from my father. Everybody in my family did, including my mom. And so even though I was a kind of a social butterfly in high school, I was a varsity football player, I had the lead in the school play, I was asked to be the MC in the variety show, but I didn't even know how traumatized. I didn't know that I was depressed and traumatized, so I did not get into any college. I'm rejected by them all, and got into county college only. So by the time I was 20 though, I was feeling so kind of alone and distraught and despondent that I self-admitted myself to a private psychiatric hospital, and I was there for 2 months in the adolescent unit, and a priest from my mother's parish came to visit me. He said, "Dennis, come see me, when you get out." And he was a very calm demeanor. My autobiography was dedicated to him. His name was Don Ganley, Father Don Ganley. When I got out one day, I just was destroyed. I got knocked on his door and cried for the first time, and just told him how difficult my life was, and he helped me so much. And eventually he got me into a day hospital program, and I just grew and developed so much. So when I went into kind of consulting coaching, it was to kind of give back because of the success I've had and give back to help other people. So I became committed to that. And that's what I've done for the past, 20 years. So I enjoy coaching, consulting, helping others. I rarely ever turn anybody else down, but that's a little bit of the background, a little bit.
Thank you for sharing that story. Man, I would have ever guessed. And so I'm kind of curious too.
Kevin, just interrupt. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. But when I asked a friend for 35 years if he would read my manuscript for my autobiography, and he goes to me, no way. I go, way. He goes, no way. I said, way. So, yeah, I didn't share with anybody back then, except my wife. My wife knew what was going on. But I just became determined to succeed and be happy. I really be determined to reach my potential. It was the kind of my thing. And I did and have succeeded beyond probably most imaginations. And my new book that just is in the publisher's editing department right now is called What Every Nonprofit CEO Needs to Know, How to Help Your Organization Reach Its True Potential. So that's kind of about my life as I reached my potential clearly, probably exceeded it, but I'm happy to give back, Kevin. I kind of believe that I have an opportunity to help other people, and that's what I do.
Yeah, and this concept of giving back, you mentioned it a few times. Is that how you chose nonprofits?
Yeah, it is. I'll tell you the actual story. So one of the last things I did as president of this medical center was I built a beautiful cancer center. And it came about, without all the details, it came about creating an advisory board of cancer patients that were family members from the board and a few other key people in the community and our radiation therapy physician and medical oncologist, whatever, and some people. And I invited the regional person that was involved with the American Cancer Society. And when I left the hospital after 7 years, I went to meet with her, and I wasn't sure what my business was going to be at the time. I had some ideas, but I wasn't really sure, and I wasn't thinking nonprofits, wasn't thinking anything. She asked me one day in her office. She said to me, stop by and say hello. And she asked me, she goes, how'd you build your board? And how'd you raise all that money? And how'd you build your leadership team? I swear to God, I talked with her for about 90 minutes. Her name is or was Robin Alber. She was back then with the American Cancer. I think she went to the Salvation Army. And I literally, after talking with her, went into the the back to get in my car to go home, I guess. And I got hit by like a thunderbolt. I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help nonprofit organizations become successful. That's where it happened. And all of a sudden, that's where my life has been for the past 20 years.
How do these nonprofits find out about you? Is it through like LinkedIn or
Well, yeah, well, in the
referrals?
beginning, how I did in the beginning was I reached out to the different, and where I originally from in California now, but I'm originally from New Jersey, so I reached out to the different trade associations that were involved in it. Did a number of workshops, and then, wrote my first book. So I, had information to share with them, and so I would go to a workshop and things like that, and then, I had people build me a website back then, and, I didn't know anything about social media at the time, but I had hired a woman who was, I've had a couple people, but back in the first stage was a woman named Maria Semple, who was excellent, and in terms of, marketing and outreach. And so we did a lot of webinars and did a lot of webinars for that. Now, today, I have like 13,000 followers on LinkedIn and 21,000 CEOs in my contact email list. And I've spoken all over the country on different conferences. I've done been a guest on other podcasts, written 7 books now. My 7th book is into the publisher, and I speak a lot, and I guess that's how people got to know me.
And let's talk about like giving back, right? Because you are serving mostly nonprofits at this moment right now. I guess where would you say in your coaching journey right now, I guess, like with your business?
Yeah, a couple things here. Besides being a coach or consultant to the nonprofit organizations, I'm also oftentimes, and I enjoy it, invited to be a keynote speaker, motivational speaker at a conference that has nothing to do with nonprofits. Last year, April of 24, I was invited by Chris Wray at the FBI to be the only speaker at their National Leadership Conference. It was based upon my TED Talk and my autobiography, Moppin Floors, the CEO, about resiliency and adversity and then determination. A lot of law enforcement agents, don't deal with that. So I can speak at a corporate event, a business event, trade association event about speaking, and I've done a lot of that. Also, even though I was a corporate executive for 7 years, I don't do consulting in the corporate world, though I did have, some of the board members of my clients are, prominent corporate people. I do retreat facilitations for some large organizations, universities, major healthcare systems, some large nonprofits. I've spoken at lots of chamber events, and I've coached and recruited, chamber business trade associate people. I don't kind of coach corporate executives, though I speak and does about resiliency and things like that. There's just certain things that one, needs to do, and I guess in any business, but I don't portray myself as a business advisor, business coach. It's not the thing that has me passionate about. It's helping other people. And so, if I'm working with, I never forget this, Kevin. I was working with a very large behavioral healthcare organization with the board chair and CEO and helping them with their strategic vision going forward and doing a retreat and things like that. I'll never forget that story. And I remember walking into the building, past the lobby, and it dawned on me, so I don't know how old I was back then, and it dawned on me as I walked by there, I was a kid that sat in the lobby waiting for the therapy session to start.
And I'm curious because I know you're coaching these nonprofits and stuff. And what do these coaching sessions look like? Are they like one-on-one? Are they group coaching? What do the containers look like?
Yeah, oftentimes one-on-one. So I have two other colleagues that work with me now. Alan Weisberg, who's the former chief learning officer for Johnson & Johnson, and a gentleman named, Pat Collins, who's a philanthropy expert. So usually it involves, and I'm doing a couple right now, so it usually involves, I'm working with a CEO right now who's in an urban area running a nonprofit organization helping out with, various issues there. And I will advise him about, working with his board is a big issue that I work on. A lot of how to work with boards, and I can come back to that. Do a lot of work with how to get everybody on your leadership team aligned with you so they're all behind your vision. So you don't have people in sort of silo mentality, everybody doing like their own little thing, but nobody achieving anything for the organization. So, recently we just did a big project, my colleague and I, for a major behavioral healthcare place in Arkansas, Washington, a wonderful CEO named Susan Smith, wonderful, and helped her kind of, build a strong organization, but making sure that everybody understood, the role they play. But how we do that and how I do that is you got to listen first. So I'll have individual interviews with either the members of the executive team, or we will do a group interview with people from the management team. And so you have, Kevin, it's, my wife teaches me all the time, Dennis, stop talking, listen. Two things, you have to listen, you have to hear what they have to say. I do ask them, particularly if I'm doing a retreat, I ask them, when the retreat is over and you say, that was wonderful, what would make it wonderful? And if you start with their answer, what would make it wonderful? Then you build the program to that. So I start off with listening and then asking questions.
Something that stands out to me is this feeling of impact, right? And it seems like that's your next direction, right? And so I'm kind of curious, where do you want this coaching business to take you over the next few years? Do you have any big secrets, secret gems, or?
Yeah, we'll launch a business and we'll be announcing a lot of things right after, Labor Day holiday. It's, besides, the company is Dennis C. Miller LLC, but really it's a small group of people with, 40, 50 years of each of experience. And besides the coaching consulting, what we have, Kevin and I developed, we have a CEO annual evaluation, a CEO self-evaluation tool. We have a board leadership. We have a board assessment tool, so we can measure how well is the board doing its job in terms of mission and culture and values. What's the relationship with leadership? How well does the board do its job? How well is leadership doing its job? Really important to ask questions about a nonprofit board, and I'm not speaking about the corporate board, but a nonprofit board has a number of stages. If you're starting out as a nonprofit, you're all going to be founders, and then as you develop over time, you're going to take on the leadership role and the legal role of fiduciary responsibility. Any organization that becomes a certified nonprofit through the IRS or the state treasury department has certain fiduciary responsibilities, which is basic, okay. But then boards evolve, and everybody who served on a board, became kind of a strategic advisor. Make sure your financial plan is in place. It was kind of like being sort of almost like a parent. But even though people did it well, making sure your strategic plan was updated, make sure you're getting your results. There was a great book that was written 20 years ago called Governance as Leadership, Reframing the Work of the Board by three amazing people from Harvard, Richard Chait, Barbara Taylor, and I think William Ryan. When I left the medical world, I remember reading the book, and it got very technical, so I sped read it, but it talked about the next stage of governance as one of partnership, where the board is in partnership with the CEO, not just saying all in favor, saying aye, improving things, but where you want your board to be engaged so they too want to own the vision and own the goals and own the dreams of the organization. So anyway, I teach that, I teach philanthropy, but we are these evaluation tools which are meant to help people grow and develop develop. You know, a lot of people here, what do you mean I'm gonna be assessed? What do you mean you're gonna evaluate my performance? I'm a volunteer on this board. Who are you, you know? And it's
Mm.
always, there are best practices. And I've known from 40 years of experience, it's not intellectual, it's not academic, it's from real, you know, experience. So where I want the practice go to is we want to be the national leader in working with nonprofit organizations around the country and with their trade associations and with their membership themselves. So they can serve out their mission, their social mission, as best as possible, because the ultimate beneficiary is the people they serve. Again, I go back to why did I decide to do this, Kevin? You know, I was given a lot of help by First Father Gantley. You won't believe this, but I was 21 years old when I was in this day hospital program that, you know, Monday through Friday, kind of a group therapy thing that helped me, you know, start to believe in myself. And about a month ago or less, I had a conversation with a gentleman who was the psychologist of the group. That was 54 years ago. Who could do that? So it's a kind of interesting stuff. I don't know. Ask me some more questions. I don't want to just do all the talking.
Yeah, no worries. You mentioned you wanted to be a national leader, right, with your coaching business, especially for the nonprofits. I guess what are some challenges that you're kind of seeing as you're working toward this vision?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I mean, I try to work through trade associations. Some want to, you know, do their own thing. They don't want to bring other people in. That's one thing. Or they think their members don't want to be involved in board coaching leadership, and that's up to them, but I don't think they serve the mission well. I mean, I've been to a lot of national conferences where there's hardly any CEOs between you and me, and I've been to some significantly large conferences where a couple of people say, what's here for me? Fairly well known, but I think I want to be, for lack of a term, I guess the term is a thought leader, Kevin, that I want to help as many people as we can. We're doing that through, I started my own podcast. It's called Visionary Leaders. So I've been interviewing some of the more prominent national people. I mean, Chuck Angolia, who's the CEO and president of the National Council of Wellbeing, has been my guest. Jody Levinson Johnson, the president and CEO of Social Current. I've got Shannon McCracken coming up next week, who's the president of the Nonprofit Alliance. I've got Dr. Watkins, who's the president of the independent sector. So a lot of people coming out. I now post into LinkedIn and things like that. So I moved to California 4 years ago, so a lot of people know me on the East Coast. I'm getting to know people in California. It's just a matter of getting exposure and awareness. That's all it is. And Kevin, that's another thing. There's a lot of people do nonprofit consulting, so you have to be able to, like I do, differentiate myself. That there's a lot, very good people out there, and I refer work to people. I've got, one of my colleagues former colleagues in my firm is a guy named Gregory Nielsen. Greg's from Kentucky, originally from New York, and I refer a lot of strategic planning to him, and to Jay Weissman up in New Jersey, a lot of stuff to Jay and things like that. So, just the challenge is just having the time and committing to it. It's a lot of work.
And also, final question. If you had to start over tomorrow with like 0 followers, 0 clients, none of the relationships that you have right now, but you have all the knowledge and wisdom that you have now, what would you do in the first 90 days to rebuild your practice?
Wow, that's a great question, and I don't have any prepared answer, but I would say this. I think what I would do, or my advice to anybody starting new, and I said this to people, is I'd write something. I would write an article, I'd write a blog, I would post it on LinkedIn or other sources here. I'd start portraying out knowledge. I'd give something to other people here. I think that is what I would do. And I think, got me, for lack of a better term, off the ground was, there was a gentleman when I first started consulting who came to me, actually the first year or two I became a so-called consultant. A former head of human resources for the state of New Jersey, a guy named George Albany, he's a great guy, had a lobbying firm because of his connections under Governor Kane, and asked me to introduce him to people. So I used to do that. But I had a gentleman named Wayne Pollard come to me, referred by my colleague and best friend, that still is Dave Flood, phenomenal development officer, probably the best in the country. And Wayne said, would you like someone to help you write an article? I said, yeah, sure. So we sat down and, crafted an article about the board's role in philanthropy, and we submitted to this big healthcare magazine. They came back and said, we're not interested in a board should be involved in fundraising. I said, what? Are you kidding me? He said, I can help you write a book. So he would meet with me, record things. And then I remember he sent me a draft, and I was like, that's not the way I talk. And I was like, okay, you have any books that, So I gave him a book nobody wrote it, sort of in the first person. And I always had a great respect for Wayne and still do. Haven't talked to him in years, but I then just took his process and wrote my first book. And before you know it, got published. And then it was like Planned Parenthood. I wrote a book every 3 years. 2007, my first book. 2010, 13. I think I wrote my autobiography in 16. Got republished in 21. Wrote another book. And then last year I wrote a book called The Importance of Nonprofit Leadership. And then this year I wrote my new book. It's called Whatever, I think I told you, what every nonprofit CEO needs to know, guide to helping you reach your organization's true potential. So that's my advice. Be right, communicate, offer something that people can relate to. That's my suggestion. That's how you get known.
Do any of your current marketing strategies, do you create any content in the modern day, social media world these days?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So I've had three people, since I started my consulting career, all who've been significantly. One, Maria Semple, a woman that was just with me for forever, wonderful, Michelle Hickey, and then a woman that's with me now, Kristen Begley, who started out with my website, and she's marketing communication. So we do a lot of things on LinkedIn, social media that she does. I'm now learning to post and things on LinkedIn and get reaction to it. So I think that's important. Now, mostly the stuff I post is on LinkedIn. I know that in terms of consultant that I'll be working with that are promoting me as a speaker, and another person who's going to promote my next book, they'll use Facebook and other vehicles like that. But from my perspective, LinkedIn is probably the best. When I was a young CEO, there was no internet. I remember there was a man that came by with a cart for the mail, and he had a file, and he drop off your mail and pick up your mail. And when I left that hospital in 91 or 92, and the gentleman who was my CFO, who I recruited, come out with a website. I'm like, why would a hospital have a website? You think about how silly it is. So, the world of social media is, good and bad. It's out there. Content is important thing. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yes, I agree with you 1,000%, by the way. Okay, Dennis, how do people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I love this. So first of all, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Dennis C. Miller. I just do that because it was always, Dennis Miller was a comedian. I tell people I was funny to him. So I'm on LinkedIn, Dennis C. Miller on LinkedIn. My website is denniscmiller.com. My email is dennis@denniscmiller.com. And so reach out to me on LinkedIn, reach out to me, my email, and my website is my phone number. Reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with anybody, and I'm happy to help out wherever I can.
Love it. Dennis, thank you. It's been a pleasure today. You're a man of a lot of stories. I'm sure we could have gone 2 or 3 hours more longer if we really dove into those stories. Part of me was like, oh man, if I dive into it, we're not going to hit. I know you have a hard cutoff later too. So yeah, but thank you so much for sharing your stories. They're really important for other coaches to know and all that. And especially hearing how far you've gone, it's very inspiring to people who are younger like myself as well. So I just wanted to let you know that as well, Dennis.
I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed. Kevin, I appreciate it very much and look forward to hearing from you listeners and talking again.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.